All right, here we go. In 3, 2, we live.
Yeah,
Welcome to Operation Hustle.
To Operation Hustle. We are back. Week number 2 here in the Operation Hustle gym setting.
Ooh. Gaim, the gym. The gymnasium.
So we're definitely planning on expanding our audiences here, and we are hoping to have clients back in here and interviewing clients again, and maybe making this podcast a little bit more unique. Because we have a bigger setting, we're not sitting at a table, hopefully some future episodes of us maybe doing different things in the gym.
Yeah, I want to do some, basically where we're walking around the gym, we're doing workouts. If you guys
have any ideas or want to see anything done in these podcasts, let us know. I'm just going to fix this tilt. And
she's going to fix the IG cam.
We are starting now. So if you didn't hear me, if you have any sort of topics, wow, I forgot this filter was on.
She's all over the place.
Any sort of topics that you guys want to hear.
We're live and she's talking to 18 different cameras.
Let us know.
Sorry, people.
All right, we are live. Here we go.
Well, the only problem with IG is they can't hear the mic, so it's going to sound like dog shit.
Well, they can try or they can not.
Unfortunately, if you want to join in, this will be on YouTube soon.
Yes,
tonight.
This will be on YouTube, and we're going to upload it to Facebook as well.
Yeah.
Is that where we've been uploading?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I got to upload last week's too.
Okay, cool.
Because I had to put it on YouTube. And
all right, starting and diving back into what Ali and I were digging a huge hole into with depression before this podcast episode. So, ask the question again, Ali, so we can discuss it one more time with Justin's opinions involved.
What's the point of diminishing returns on promoting or disseminating knowledge on depression as or just knowledge on depression or depression in general, or how much real estate should it take up in the average person's mind as far as giving it thought space?
Justin?
I mean, there's no say on how much time it should take because it kind of just, I guess it can come and go.
Mm-hmm. It's not linear, and the problem is it's not universal for everyone. And this comes back to this realm of what we discuss a lot. What makes one human being able to go through something traumatic and move forward out of it in a quicker amount of time than another? And that's still a question that I'm seeking to find, is what differentiates us when it comes to mental strength. Why do some people need to go on medication and some people can not go on medication? And what defines a mental illness and what defines a disease? And that's something that, I feel as differs in everybody, but some people believe it to be more objective. What are your thoughts?
Well, okay, so I like the questions that you posed. And they all are going to play into essentially how one would develop their own, roadmap to dealing with depression. But also the question is, when do you go off map? When have you gone too far in either direction? Whether you medicated when you shouldn't have, or whether you didn't medicate when you should have.
I got a perfect example, and I didn't think about this while we were talking. So here's where I do differ. I think that we forget sometimes, although that Western medicine can be helpful, at a longevity, it can be damaging. And so that's where we didn't talk about it, right? Is that I'm going to give an example. Somebody's on an antidepressant for 30 years, right? What we don't remember is that just as in other medicines can cause our body to become tolerant and then our body no longer works in the same way, why do we trust doctors so much that we immediately assume that antidepressants, antipsychotics, that they don't do the same thing, right? So essentially what I'm getting at is after a certain longevity of being on 30 years of being on an antidepressant, unfortunately, now you can't ever probably come off of it and be the same person you would have been if you only went on it and used it as a tool for 6 months and got off of it, because now your brain doesn't produce dopamine in the same way. So you'll have to find it in other ways, and it'll be a way more difficult time to find it naturally than it was if you were to get off of it in 6 months. Does that make sense?
Exactly. And to prove your point, I just pulled up the history of antidepressants. They were only by chance created in the 1950s. We've only had these around for, we're going on 70 years now.
Yeah,
so
and my grandmother's taken them for 30.
Exactly.
And this is actually where Abby, I think, was going with this, is my grandma was on them for 30 years, and all of a sudden she stopped taking them.
She didn't stop, she forgot.
She forgot to take them.
Prescription.
She's getting older. She's 75, 5, 6, whatever. Anyway, she stopped taking her antidepressants. And all of a sudden she was like fucking freaking out, like in the store, like falling over. Help me, I need help. I don't know where I am.
I'm falling.
And then they figured out like she stopped taking those antidepressants all of a sudden. And she was on them for so long that, it obviously changed the way that she functioned without them.
Yeah.
And so once she got back on them, started to become normal again, which is insane that she needs to have a drug to become normal.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
But there's a form of dogma associated with depression that I do want to address because it definitely exists. There's a mindset that becomes associated with, and there's a mindset that becomes promoted by, people that umbrella or associate a part of they'll use it as an umbrella term, or they'll associate a part of their identity to their depression. They'll say, this is a part of me, it is inextricable, I must be true to this part of me. Everything I've been told, must be validated and, seen within my immediate world. And it must be...
Okay, so I thought of a perfect example for this. I can understand where sometimes you ingraining yourself in this identity can become crippling and can actually stop you from using something like a medication as a tool rather than, making it more longevity instead of using it as a tool, right? So that's like the whole, hey, get off your pity pot. Unfortunately, I do think that medication can work for short periods of time, but it needs to be followed up with the right type of cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Or talk therapy, because of the fact that you need somebody to help manage your thoughts, because you do start to do that. You start to say, oh, I feel better, so I must need this, right? Just like people who take phentermine pills, right? They lose a bunch of weight, and now they won't ever come off of it because they're afraid to, because if they come off of it, they'll gain the weight back. They've convinced themselves that, right?
Yeah.
I don't believe in phentermine pills, period. I don't promote them, I don't enable them, but sure, do they help people lose weight? Sure. Very unhealthily. But maybe if somebody got off of it and then learned to, hired a dietitian, learned to eat healthy, had a healthier relationship, they were only on them for like a couple months, right? That person is not going to have that same mindset of ingraining themselves in the identity that they need it. Does that make sense? But here's where you need to have self-actualization. I'm going to relate it to myself, to the point where you understand that there are some things, that reactions that you might have that maybe are out of your control, but you can learn how to shorten the reactions, right? And I do think that people who are schizophrenic and bipolar, they can, with the right cognitive behavioral therapist, can learn to also do this as well, because there's no reason that that person is different than me when I have PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD when I was younger. Like, I think it was when I was 16, 15, 16. I didn't really understand what it was, so I never really acknowledged it. But now, as I'm starting to see, looking back on these behaviors that I was having while I was heavy in my alcoholism, I'm like, yeah, I think I wasn't noticing that because I was numbing it and I was covering it with the blanket of alcohol. But you can't deny the fact, ask my husband, when he walks in a room and if you don't knock on the door, I will jump 20 feet and probably scream, what the fuck? Who are you? You
I've
can't
done it too many
ignore
times,
that.
unfortunately.
That happens to me.
Yeah.
And it's automatic. Just like you can't ignore someone who's schizophrenic having a psychotic break. It's automatic and it happens. You cannot say that person can function,
And you can't just turn it off.
You can't turn it off.
But that shit's on, and it's very hard to turn off.
But
for some people,
my reaction time has gotten shorter. So like, got better. When you get me heightened that way, I'm in my full-on flight or fight mode, like a soldier would be if they heard a noise, right? It brings them back to that traumatic moment of, oh my god, the guns are going off, war! And you're like, I have to protect myself. And I go into protector mode. And I used to it would last a couple hours. Now it's shortened. So I've learned how, but I know I'm always going to have that reaction. It's never going to go away. Because it's been there the entire time. I just am finally acknowledging that this is what's going on. And I'm finally realizing that this is a part of me, but it doesn't need to control me. Does that make sense? I'm learning to navigate around it.
So you're speaking in a lot of definitive terms, but we're all temporary. This whole experience that we're having is temporary. Everything in life is temporary. Everything has a time, it has a place, it has a value. I think in a kind of, I don't know, the way that I look at life, the way that I've been looking at life, is that while there may be some efficacy to certain trajectories and certain behaviors, I think that there needs to be a really, truly, truly deep dive. And sometimes these dives, honestly, you could dive into one subject and dive into that subject your entire life and you'll never hit the bottom of it because that's just the complexity of the human mind. But I think recognizing the value of certain systems and certain applications and certain medications or, specific systems of thought or recognition of, those moments where you might have that, initial fight or flight reaction to a door opening that you didn't expect to open, it's an insight into a multitude of possibilities for, solution. So it depends on the person, and I think that a lot of people will thrive under different solutions and that there are a lot of solutions to be explored. Specifically, whenever you say stuff like that, like your fight or flight is being triggered, I think of my own, insecurities and how, what from my own traumatic experiences or whatever, when I was younger, I became very insecure in public places. So I felt like, I don't know what I would do if I had to defend myself. I don't know, if someone tried to attack me, what I would do. And my what's been working for me so far is an exposure therapy. So exposure to the exact things that fuck with me. So what I've been doing is, I've been fighting, I've been sparring, I've been exposing myself to the most chaotic situations possible and bringing control to myself. Not the situation, control to myself. So I don't know. I think that there are so many variables, and it's very interesting.
I think that you learned how to find, you learned how to navigate around it, right? So really, the reality of it is that you feel unsafe because you didn't feel safe as a child, right? And so now it's like I have to learn how to defend myself because somebody could do this again, right? Yeah, no. So exactly. Now, one person, and this is where we have this, infinite question, right? Yeah. What in the brain is different from Ollie, who chose to use fighting in a healthier realm, to learn self-defense, to release anger, to make him feel safe, to make him feel strong, and to make him feel like no longer vulnerable and insecure in that manner, right, of safety. And then there's others who will go pick fights in bars, get arrested, and they try to find power and security in that way. So what is the difference? And that's the infinite question I'm searching for. How does one learn to use that trauma for their own good? Now, and I'm going to get now related to myself. I don't wish to not have this reaction. Why? And I saw how it works in a greater good for me versus Justin. I handle, and you can ask him, when it comes to super intense situations, a lot better than him. Because I've already been through so much trauma that these things don't equate to that to me. So I remember our landlord was upset with us for running our business out of the garage. He gave us some fake eviction letter.
Trying to
I'm
give us
gonna
the
laugh
boot.
about it now because now we're way past it, right?
Fuck you, Chris.
But Justin starts immediately freaking out. We have to stop everything now. Call these people. We're not training them. And he's like, I'm calling my mom. I don't know what to do. I said, shut the fuck up. Sit down and let me think. And I thought for a second. I was like, okay, boom, I got it. So I called the lawyer, asked my lawyer, what do we do? He laughs. He said, this is a fake eviction letter, right? But if we went into snowball mode like Justin wanted to, we would have no fucking business. Yeah. But if we went into my flight or fight mode, it allowed me to immediately go to survival mode, which was, no, you're not going to impulsively make that decision. We're going to think through it, and we're going to find the solution of how we can make this work, right? So, survival.
Yeah, so what you brought up there was very interesting, because that was a survival situation that required on societal aptitude. So an ability to assess your standpoint within a society and your leverage points within that society. Your leverage point being your lawyer, and your standing being the tenant, which has some legal right. And then your landlord being the fraud in this case scenario. Now, there's another very interesting scenario which happened to you guys recently.
Fuck you, Chris.
Fuck you, Chris. We need a button
Fuck
for
you,
that.
Chris.
Fuck you, Chris.
Fuck you, Chris.
Yeah.
Right?
But
fucking Chris, bro.
But there was another recent scenario, and would you guys mind talking about it? The gunshots in the backyard.
Oh,
scenario.
yeah. Okay. All right, I'll explain the story.
That's a
lot different.
All right, so
it's
this scenario.
Because the noise got me. And
Exactly.
immediately, but you see how the difference of survival mode?
They don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
The podcast doesn't know the story yet.
Justin, you explain.
All right, so we're sitting in the house. My bedroom is butt up to our fence in the backyard. All of a sudden, we fucking hear bang, 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 bang. I was like, oh shit, those are gunshots. Get the fuck on the ground, Abby. And she looks at me and like tears are literally starting in her eyes already. And she's like, what are we doing? I was like, get on the ground. I grabbed all my guns. I start loading them up with more ammo. And she's like, what are we doing? I was like, I trained for this. So I was like...
And I'm like, he's showing me how to use the gun, and I'm just like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, what do you mean you shot that? And I'm like, I don't know.
She's in full panic mode, and I'm in not panic mode. I'm actually prepared for this. And I load up. I go out to the living room with the gun. I check it out. I got my flashlight. I'm doing all my things. I go out to the garage. Dallas is chilling. Our uncle. He doesn't think anything's really going on. He hears a gun. He thinks he hears gunshots. The garage is wide open. That man doesn't care about anything.
Okay, well, it's not about that.
I understand.
It's about the gunshots.
It's part of the
Let's
story.
focus on that.
Still part of the story. Anyway, so I come back.
I don't want to share that with
There's
us.
cops in the backyard shining around, so it was really gunshots. But anyway, when we break it down, Abby freaked out. I held my cool. We would have survived that situation because you're boy.
So my breakdown from what I see between the two of you is Abby operates really well within a societal structure that you may not have been able to operate well within, but within a violence level structure when there is no society.
So here you go. Here's
Justin
the mic
operates
drop.
very well.
The trauma is different in both of us.
Yeah.
Right? So his chaos was different than my chaos.
Mhm.
And
Sure.
that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I don't believe medicine should be sought out as longevity solution. Because you need to learn how to navigate around the rest of the world, because eventually that tolerance of that antidepressant, it's no longer going to affect your brain. So you have two solutions. Increase the dose, or fucking learn how to navigate around the world finally after 15 years.
Well,
Right?
what if all of a sudden you couldn't either like afford that medicine or they got rid of the medicine? What would you do without it?
Right.
That's the scary
And I'm
part.
not saying, so please don't, if you are listening to this, please don't think that I am judging anybody that's on medication. I have went on an antidepressant several different times in my life for circumstantial stuff, including not knowing why I was not motivated and having no reason and succumbing to that because I needed to thrive in that societal structure, which was school at the time. And then when my mother died, I succumbed to that. Succumb, whatever.
Succumb to it.
Succumbed.
It made me came.
So I succumbed to it again and realized this may be the demise of me, and my sobriety is that important that I'm willing to get on Western medicine again to try to move past this. But you can ask him, because even recently my mom had asked me if I was still on. She said, oh, I thought you were still on the antidepressant, because she must think I'm doing well, and I took that as a compliment. And then, I'm really positive, I'm in this different spirituality, but I'm not. I haven't been on that medication in literally,
It's been a year.
I think, over a year.
Yeah.
Right? So, and it was used, and my counselor, and this is why I really like my counselor, and I continue to go to her and continue to just use her as someone to vent to and just talk to about different things that are causing me stress and stuff, had said, use this as pre-bereavement. And not a lot of counselors do that. I need you to use this as pre-bereavement and get yourself prepared for the battle. And the battle was most average humans don't go through losing their parents within 6 months of each other. And I lost my mother to an overdose, which was an ambush death, versus a death that I was prepared for. They're completely different griefs, and it's insane. I can't, honestly, when I'm thinking back on how I handled it, I couldn't tell you how I did it. I honestly could not yet. I hope to have the answers in the next 5 years so I can help others, but it feels like a blur. And when I go back, it honestly feels like yesterday my mom died. That's how much I blocked that out and went into complete survival mode. And that's why sometimes trauma is a good thing. I don't regret it, because the trauma allows me to move past and block and protect the brain when necessary.
It's a form of training.
It is a form of training. It's a mode, and my sister and I have talked about this a lot, because she realized that she also has this training and does this blocking out thing with different things herself. And so back to what we talked about with like disease wise, it's like I don't like labels, but at the same time I think it's important to get to a point where you self-actualize and realize some things are out of our control, like the reactions, right? And that was something my counselor said. This is a damage to your brain, and if we did a scan on your brain right now, your brain, this front part of your brain would be larger than Justin's because of the amount of trauma that you've been through. You only know the cherry on top. I've been through shit that people couldn't even imagine. I don't talk about it often, but I know I'm going to always react differently to people, and that's why sometimes I can listen, and if you're really hitting an emotional trigger for me, I might just like snap, you know, like, and
I'm sure Ollie has experienced this
and I will come to
firsthand from Abby.
Now, you haven't met younger Abby. Now I will come to you and say, I'm sorry, Ollie, you know, I was stressed out. Yeah. I should have waited on that conversation, and I should have had that separately because I allowed the other stress to, you know, trickle into this conversation, right? I think I've even had one of those with you, right? But unfortunately, I know now I will continue to struggle with this, but I will master how long I allow it to affect me, and I will master being able to take accountability for myself and to take accountability for these actions and not justify it with an excuse of, I have PTSD, you're going to have to learn how to navigate around it. No. People shouldn't have to learn how to navigate around you. You have to learn how to navigate around the rest of the world. And I thought about this as we were talking about it, for instance, and we talked about how antidepressants weren't around forever. When we went to St. Augustine this past weekend, we looked at the, what are you pointing at?
The social media.
Oh, okay. We looked at Mr. Flagler, who had built the Flagler College, and correct me if I'm wrong because I think this is Mr. Flagler, who was known to be very depressed. It was in the wax museum. Oh, yeah, it was Mr. Flagler because they had a wax museum with him. He was depressed pretty much his whole life, but he still thrived within societal structure and still made all these extreme things like the Flagler College, right? He had a Leitner Museum, the Ponce de Leon Hotel. People were flocking to this hotel, you know? But he was depressed, and there was no antidepressants back then. But somehow he still stayed motivated. Mm-hmm. He didn't allow it.
I think you smoked that smoke.
Become a justification, and then say, you know what? I'm not going to do anything in my life because I'm depressed.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, like, while you may understand and recognize that this is a limitation of yourself,
right? You're
not using it as some form of shield or sword to use against others. So, like, you
got it.
Yeah, you're part of the cycle. Especially when you tap down on, you said, like, I may have PTSD, but that's not an excuse for, like, your actions, and that's not an excuse for me to tell other people to operate differently according to me. Now, I think that's really important because that's something that we see a lot of in our modern social media and in our modern PC culture where,
Absolutely.
Exactly, people feel entitled to hurt other people because they were hurt.
Yes.
Bullshit.
And let's dive on this deeper.
That's most things.
This literally trickles down, and you can find this pattern in every type of sensitivity that this society has. You feel hurt that, and I'm going to give you experience, you feel hurt because somebody was hateful towards you because you're gay, right? And now you feel that everybody should accept it. It's okay if people don't agree with the fact that you're gay, but they should still respect human beings, right? Because we're still put on this earth, right? And you're still all brothers and sisters. But I don't need to agree. I don't need to accept you as a gay. I'm not saying this is me, but I'm just saying in general, I'm using this as an example. You know, and unfortunately, I feel as if this way that the society is going is you either accept me or you're against me. And that is wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's where I believe that people become so entitled. And then I've been watching this Hulu TV show, and I'm trying to now think about this same type of mindset.
Oh, that shit's wild.
It's wild because it's like I understand part of her, but I don't understand part of her. But anyways, it's called The Deep End. And people think she's a cult. I think within her inner circle she is because her trauma allows her to. But you agreed this too. You agreed that she's helping others. It's weird. It's not her work isn't cult-like, and even this private investigator said that. I'm not so sure the work she's doing with others, she's healing them. But her inner circle.
Weird.
How is she healing them?
Okay, so listen. This is like she's basically keeping it extremely real with everyone, telling them like.
But they can't handle the truth.
These are all people that basically want to kill themselves. Like suicidal people that seek out her, right? Am I right on this?
Right.
So they're all hurting really bad, and she just tells them the truth. Like, hey, if you really truly feel that way, maybe you should do it. And she makes them think about if they really should do it. And some parents are like really freaking out because their kid killed themselves and they blame her. But then other people are like, she saved my life by telling me this.
Right.
And now there's like retreats and a bunch of culty weird things that are going on with it, which I don't agree with. But she's trying to control this big operation, basically.
It's growing too fast.
It's overgrowing, and now it's so controversial that like she's getting in trouble because of the things that she's basically making these people sign off on. It is culty, but they do sign it. So there's my thing. If you sign it, you know what you're getting into.
And here's the other problem, and you're going to agree with this.
It's very straightforward. the actual things. Like, it's like,
Very
you will
straightforward.
agree with this. It's very cultist. I don't agree with it.
Listen, exactly. If Jeffrey Epstein
I don't agree with
made
it.
people sign contracts, it doesn't make it, the greatest
No,
thing in the
but
world.
he's missing a big part of this, and this is where I think that you'd like the show and you would agree with it, because she literally is telling people, do not come to this retreat if this is not something that you think you can do. She will tell people that. It is intense, you will hurt, you will cry, you will find repressed memories, so if that is not for you, do not come. And these people are still signing off and then getting upset if that, daughter or son is going home and killing themselves. Here's my thing. Hello, parents. This is coming from somebody who has had a suicide attempt. Just because one person told them to kill themselves, they would have done it anyway. If they really wanted to do it, they will do it. You will never talk somebody out of killing themselves. I know this. My mother has passed on from an overdose, right? She wanted to die. I was not going to change her mind. But sometimes that tough love, that critical thinking, right, telling them, why should you be on this planet? I literally watched her ask somebody on stage, why should you be on this planet then? That makes them think deeper, and that is why they have never gotten out of the depression, because not anybody has asked them that question. They've just shoved them a medication. And that's why I go back to, I think that antidepressants can work really well with the right cognitive behavioral therapist or with the right talk therapy, because otherwise you are left to your own demise thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's an equation. It's just part of it.
And so, unfortunately, some of these people are doing that. But here's the thing. Stop blaming others and start realizing you can't control others. You can't, convince them to stay on this earth if they don't want to. Just like when somebody is dying of cancer, you may want them to fight, but how selfish is that? Because here's the thing. You don't know what type of pain they're in, and you don't know what type of pain your daughter or son is in, and maybe they're not telling you what the real trauma is. Maybe they were raped as a child, and they're not telling you that. And maybe it was somebody that you know, and they don't want to tell you that, right? And so you're not going to convince them that trauma isn't deep enough for them to not want to be on this earth.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know their pain unless you've walked in their shoes.
Yeah. And I think this taps down on a discussion we were having before the podcast about a certain level of submission to the power of fate. Because we are not all-knowing beings. We're not all-controlling beings. We don't know what the fuck is going on. So there has to be a level of understanding that, fate plays a vital role in our lives, and it plays a vital role in developing us as people in ways that we never would see possible. Some of the most amazing people in the world have suffered the greatest traumas.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like Oprah Winfrey. Holy shit. If you knew all the shit that happened to her, it's insane. And the how powerful it made her. The fact that, her mom literally, I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure.
I've never heard Oprah.
No, it is a crazy story.
Pretty sure her mom, pinned her face to a fucking stovetop and burnt her.
Her mom also had her when she was 14
okay,
or something
so I'm
like
going
that.
to give you a perfect example. So here's another thing about this show, particularly, okay? Now, open your minds when you're listening to what we are all saying here. In this inner circle that people keep saying, this is a cult, and this girl's parents are saying, called the police on her, right? Now, what people don't know until they listen to this episode and they understand what this girl went through, she said, I cut off my parents myself because when I was a child, my dad was raping me, my mom walked in and continued to let it happen. Mm-hmm. As a child, she said she had did something and she said, she was hungry, asked her mom for something, mom said no, she ate it anyways. She said, I'm going to tell your dad. The mom knew the dad was going to rape her and that was going to be the punishment, and she allowed him to do it, walked in on it, and walked out. Then we're supposed to believe the parents that are saying this is a cult? No, lady, you're a fucking cult. That's why she's not talking to you. Open your eyes. If people are allowing themselves to be ingrained in something, it's probably for a reason, right? And so that was my point watching the show. I was like, wow, there are so many people that are sitting here saying, you made my son kill himself. Have you ever been at a place where you want to kill yourself? Because if you haven't, then you shouldn't speak on it. Mm-hmm. And the reason why this is so powerful, what I'm saying, because I have been there. I know what that fucking feeling feels like. And if you haven't, then don't ever speak on it. If you haven't actually had an attempt where you did almost die, then you really don't know what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right?
I
think...
So you can't tell that person, you should want to live. How do you know?
Yeah. It seems like your overall, lesson here is that there's a level of personal autonomy that needs to be respected, and that personal autonomy includes your own power of life over death, your own freedom of will to control what you do with your life, and understanding that other people have that power, and whether or not you feel you should control it, fuck.
It's so deep.
Theirs.
It's deep.
Theirs. It's not yours.
Yeah. And you can tell somebody, and here's the thing, you can be empathetic and see somebody struggling, you can try to help them, they're just like trying to help somebody who's on drugs or alcohol, right? You can get so upset with them, but after you've tried to help them 3 or 4 times and they continue to do it, you get to a point where you're like, this is how they want to live, right? Or a homeless person, right? Everybody thinks these people are homeless because they, don't have any money or because they don't have somewhere to live. But if you ask most of them, they want to be homeless. They have the opportunities. I mean, come on, let's look at the corners. Every other corner.
Out homeless.
You don't. And every other corner says now hiring. We are in the weirdest type of recession because it's a recession where jobs are available. So what is the problem? We've become such entitled human beings and so sensitive and think that the world is either with us or against us. And that's so wrong. It's black or white thinking, and there needs to be grayscales in between, or else we're heading to a really, really scary world.
Yeah. I think there's...
We're already there.
We're already there, is right.
Definitely there.
But I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to turn this shift. And how do we turn this shift? Do we start speaking on it more? Do we start saying more bold, powerful things like we are right now? Like, hey, if I'm going to kill myself, you're not going to stop me, right?
There's an ebb and flow to power. And I think that there's, and power is a broad term. It can be defined in so many ways. Spiritual power, physical power, mental power, whatever it may be. There's an ebb and flow to it. And I think if you're the type of person that can find the wave and that can ride it, you'll find it. And, basically everything we're talking about here, from homelessness, look at Eric Thomas. There are homeless people that are meant to die homeless. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's their path. There are homeless people that are meant to rise to the top. Eric Thomas. There are people that are suicidal that are meant to kill themselves.
Right.
There are people that are suicidal that are meant to use that story, become stronger, and be better people, like Abby here. There's an ebb and flow to things that you have no concept of, and that I think people need to be open to and humble enough to understand, respect, and, operate within. There's this fucking bullshit narrative that the world needs to be controlled, dictated, and you need to understand and operate within these certain guidelines. But it's all fuckery.
It is. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. I almost said private example. Perfect example. Where this is leading to is a lot of people thinking that, we need to get rid of homelessness. No, we don't. We need to keep homelessness because some people choose that. So what do you think they're going to do when you provide them a home? They're going to rip out the copper, they're going to sell the copper for drugs, and they're going to continue the cycle on. And unless you've had parents or a loved one who are drug addicts, you can't speak on this. Again, I can, and that's why I'm doing it. And these are powerful statements, and I understand that, and I understand there are people sensitive and hurt by what I'm saying. Too bad. We need to hear these things. So the problem is what this has led to, a shift in society, it's led to the shift of socialism, where we think that we need to pay student loan debt, we need to get rid of homelessness, all these things. No. So because if you get rid of student debt, what's going to happen to all the people that have literally suffered their whole life paying student debt while handling 3 children and a husband and household bills, right? They're going to be upset. So it's going to cause more damage than it is going to create this utopic world that these people think it's going to do. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that there is always a path up, and there must always be a path that, you can present. There should always be, good Samaritans, people willing to help these people.
Controlled.
Exactly. But if you look at the reality of our situation, while it may be difficult in certain situations, and, there are definitely demographics of this country that you don't want to grow up within and that will fuck you, we also live in a country where we're the top 1% of the world.
Yeah.
I know this is overused. There are children starving in Africa, but, Africa's starting to come up, actually. There's some really cool parts.
Let's go.
Elon Musk, South Africa. I mean, I'm not trying to say Africa's, as a whole is shit. What I'm saying is, there are parts of the world that are fucked.
Yeah, dude.
We have people that are homeless here.
I literally just got
the opportunity not to be.
A drone in the mail.
They're going to be homeless.
With a click of the button.
Right.
Other countries don't have that shit.
Yeah. And
I'm just like, I want this. Click. Shows up 2 days.
So I'm going to give you another example.
Fucking insane.
How long have we been doing this now? How many minutes?
We're done. 10 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes.
Not even. 5 minutes. That's what you got.
Right. So here's
Wrap
a
it up,
perfect example. And I want to bring this up. So Phil, if you're listening.
Sorry, Dr. Phil.
I disagree with him on this. And he knows this because I told him in person I disagree with it. We were talking about paying for college for kids. So he was like, you wouldn't set your kids up with, paying for college so that they can make something of themselves. And I said, absolutely fucking not. Why? I'm going to give you an example. Because when you give things to people, they don't learn the value of it. And, although that sounds so simple, and in his mind it sounds so simple, if you set me up, then I'm going to be successful. Who's to say, because this college, we've seen that these degrees mean nothing, that's going to set them up for success, right? And if I pay for everything, then they're never going to understand how hard it took for me to get them to that place, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, no, I disagree with it. My parents didn't pay for my siblings' college, and guess what? They still all went and found a way. Right? So if you want it, you will find a way. Just as people say in relationships, if you want that relationship, you will find a way. Don't believe a man who says, I'm too busy for you. That's not the case. He will find a way. We are such intense, complicated human beings that we will find a way to make something happen if we wanted to, right? Mm-hmm. And so the homeless people don't want a way. That's why they continue to live that life, right? Some people live in dwell mode in their brain. There's different modes, default mode, dwell mode. Some people do not. And unfortunately, I don't think we should change that. I think that is what makes us strive, and that's how we create great leaders that make huge change. That's how people like Gandhi, that's how people like Dr. Martin Luther King were born and, made history, was because they weren't given everything, right? No, so unfortunately, although human suffering is tough and painful to hear, we need it.
We do, and you can't flatten out the curve. Because then the world becomes an indifferent, bland, boring place of straight gray nothingness. Like, if you can go nowhere, if you can not go down, if you can't go up, what the fuck is the point? And on top of that, it's like, I just had a point. Fuck. So,
if you can't go up, you can't go down, then what strives to make you better?
But listen, people, since the dawn of time, you've had those that go down and those that go up. You can't dictate where people go. You're also then stealing their freedom of will. You can choose to decide, or you can choose to live in an Orwellian dystopian future where you flatten the curve and tell everyone that they got to fit in these tiny little fucking boxes and you got to control their thoughts. Or you can allow the freedom of will to act autonomously and rise and fall with the ebb and flow of life.
Yeah. I mean, and to bring it back to depression, which is what we were talking about, again, I'm going to say it one more time. I believe in using Western medication if you have put so many implementations in your life, you've got to a point where you're like, I'm not getting the result or the resolution that I need. I'm still negatively affecting others around me. I'm not going up. I'm continuing to go down. And when you finally have that self-actualization, I think that sometimes it can be helpful, but it's important to know going into it that it's a risk and you should not be on it forever, and it should be used as a tool, right? As a pre-bereavement, right? So, as a pre-disaster. Let's call it pre-disaster, right? Pre-train wreck. It's a way to stop the train wreck, but it's not something that you should continue so you never have a train wreck.
Yeah, I think it's necessary to recognize that in order to say these things, there has to be a level of understanding and respect for all of the situations that we're discussing. So things like homelessness, when we found out the type of person that my dad was, we were homeless for a while because we were on the run. I was living in a car eating week-old cheeseburgers. The McDonald's, that shit don't go stale.
McDoubles, baby.
It'll go stale, but it won't go bad. You can eat that shit forever.
The chicken nuggets that are still alive.
Nuggies, exactly. Nuggies.
I've experienced that level of homelessness where I was on the run, where life was fucking scary. Yeah. Abby's experienced levels of depression that have caused her to go suicidal. We've all experienced these downs and these highs. I've lived in Germany. I've eaten the fucking creme de la creme. I've been to Dresden and the fucking Vatican. I've seen the most beautiful pieces of art in the world. I've lived a very varied life in this short amount of time. And that's where I'm pulling these experiences from and I'm developing these opinions from, is because no matter what, the only thing that's controllable or that you actually have any sort of, dictation over is yourself. So fuck the situation. It doesn't matter. It's you versus you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, there's a way to get out of every hole, right? It's just figuring out which tool you're going to use next. And that's why I'm saying you shouldn't use the same tool every time. And that's the point with the medication. Several times in my life I've gone on medications. It hasn't been the same antidepressant every time. The one I took in college, the lady put me on Prozac, worked. I got motivated again. Then I realized this is giving me negative effects. I don't need this. This is not something I want to be on the rest of my life. I'm motivated again. I can come off of it. And then I went on an antidepressant after my parents died, and then I realized I will never really truly feel that, burden of grief and learn to move past it if I completely blanket it and I numb myself, and I never really feel the pain of the fact that every day when I wake up, I can no longer call my parents. They are gone. They will never be here, and I'm okay with that without tearing up right now. Why?
Yeah.
Because I faced the pain. And unfortunately, we've become a utopic society where nobody wants to ever face their pain and nobody wants to ever share their pain. And that is what will cause the demise of human beings.
Yeah. And honestly, you gotta,
pain is
there
necessary.
needs to be a level of love for
Yeah.
the pain.
Love for the pain.
Love for the pain.
I don't wish the pain away. And it's interesting to hear different people's perspectives. When people hear that my aunt charged me $300 of rent at 17 years old, and I was struggling to work 2 different part-time jobs because there wasn't a full-time job available, I'm going to wrap up with this, in my area, people are like, oh my God, wow, she's so awful. Anyways, put that down, Dustin. So I don't wish ill on her. I'm not, upset about it. I'm glad she did it because it taught me an extreme discipline, and it taught me that I am not entitled to anyone's gas money. I'm not entitled to anyone's time. Everybody's time is valuable. Everybody's money is valuable, and you are not entitled to it. And unfortunately, we have this now mindset, what's yours is mine, and that is wrong. So that is something that we need to start to address as a society. So I'll wrap it up there. But that is our opinions on depression. Remember, this is just opinions, and it's an open talk. Make yourself open, and then you'll be able to expand your mind. If the problem is when we're so sensitive that we can't hear something without just listening and opening our mind and saying, you know what, I can see that point, that's when we become a society of separation, right? So we need to be more open-minded, and we need to be, have love for the suffering. And that's just my closing thought.
No pain, no gain, motherfuckers. Hit the gym 7 days a week. Follow us on social media.
Follow us on social media. So you got
They're all down below.
both the Instas, right? absfitness_brand in Florida, absfitness_brand in Florida 2. We got Facebook, Abs Fitness LLC. We got YouTube, Abs Fitness Film House, right? TikTok is
Abs Fitness Tampa, Florida.
And
or
trainer_Torres for
They're on
all
the screen.
social media.
I gotta add yours on the screen too.
Yep.
Next week we'll be here
Torres.
Friday sometime. We'll be up. Watch us. Goodbye.
Peace.